What's your title here?
A campaign specialist.
Okay, yeah, that you are. Today, our topic that we'll be discussing is biggest crowdfunding social media mistakes. I'm the social media manager here. I'm interacting with people on social media all the time. I see really good social media strategies for crowdfunding, and I see really bad ones. I'm going to call them bad. I think it's okay to call them bad because everyone's at a different stage of this, and they got to learn. So we're going to just have a conversation and talk about some major sort of faux pas that we see when it comes to making a crowdfunding campaign successful and using social media to do this. Okay, well, one that we both feel pretty strongly about is panhandling on social media. Don't you think so, David?
Yeah, this is something we see a lot. I think as people get more savvy with social media, they figure out that this is not the right way to go. But a lot of times we see people just post the same message over and over again, being like, hey, give money to my project, give money to my campaign, give me money, like all the time, and without adding anything new to the conversation. And they're surprised when that doesn't really result in much conversion. But it's put yourself in the shoes of the audience. You don't really want to, within the first time you're like, oh, this is a project. The second time you're like, okay, enough.
Yeah. It's pretty much like when the first big mistake is thinking that you can be like a robot and be successful on social media. People want to talk to an actual person, and that's actually the strength of social media, is that you can make connections, talk to people, and be yourself. It's small communications, right? So panhandling, posting a scheduled message every single day, the same thing, and thinking that would, one, be interesting to anyone, to motivate anyone to want to support you or pay attention is just not real. And you have to think about what you would actually pay attention to in social media, and if that would actually be interesting to you if you're hanging out on Twitter. Would you be like, oh, this person says, support my campaign, I'm going to go support the campaign. I don't think that's how I'm motivated to click on a link. I think that I'm motivated to click on links if it's creative. I think I'm motivated to click on links if I have a relationship with that person. I don't know.
If it's like links that I'm like curious about, it like sparks my curiosity. Like, oh, what is that? Like, it doesn't have to be specifically like exactly what you're trying to do. But if you post something tangential to your campaign, like a did you know, like a fact, or like an interesting link that's related, that'll be much more likely that people will actually click.
And I also think that this is related to a larger idea about crowdfunding and thinking it is just asking people for money, when it really, using Indiegogo, the strength is that you build a community, and social media is a way to communicate with the community.
Absolutely.
Bam. Okay, other thing, what do you think is another?
Well, another thing that's related, very, very related to this is spamming.
Spamming. Writing to people that you don't know. Wait, I have a sign. I made a sign. Do you see that? It says don't spam, because it's really not effective. It's a waste of your time, and it actually I think damages you and your credibility. So when we say spamming, we're talking about like, oh, here, there's a lot of talk about influencers, right? Like, oh, look at these influencers. I'm going to compile 30 influencers, and then I'm going to write them the exact same message to tell them to support my campaign. I don't know how effective. It's same sort of logic here. Panhandling, posting endlessly, spamming people with this like form message, or thinking that they're going to respond isn't necessarily realistic.
And I've seen this all the time. People are just like on Twitter for a campaigner post to Shaq. Oh, here, check out my campaign. To Rihanna, here, check out my campaign. Like, these are people with massive Twitter followings, but why would they care about your random tweet? They probably have people tweeting at them constantly.
Thus, there is a workaround for this. Let's say, okay, so Shaq, one, check out Shaq's feed. David's a really big fan. He thinks he's very funny. I like Rihanna's photos on Instagram because they're sort of unfiltered and ridiculous. She's kind of, I don't know, never mind, we don't need to talk about Rihanna anymore. But what we can talk about is you can be creative in the way you reach out to people. I think that people, if you want to reach out to an influencer or celebrity, if you were to like mess with their image and create like a really funny, interesting graphic that wasn't too markety, but really was contributing to, I don't know, the cult of stardom, maybe they would retweet it, and then suddenly you have more people paying attention to what you're doing. There's creative workarounds for what we're talking about, and a lot of it is putting the energy to think through what you're actually doing.
And the thing is, also pick the right people. Don't pick somebody just because they're big on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like, why, if you, okay, so say your campaign has to do with basketball, then Shaq might be a good person to tweet it, because not only because he's big on Twitter, it's because he's, was a huge NBA guy. So, but like, Rihanna might be less of a person to tweet at just because she has nothing to do with her, so why would she pay attention?
Maybe she likes basketball.
Yeah,
I don't know, I'm just teasing. But that's a good point. Like, I think it's about, like, there's spamming, which is just the writing of messages, but there's spamming in the sense of, like, each and every campaign you're going to have is going to have certain people that are interested in what you do and certain people that aren't interested in what you do. Or maybe they could be, but who knows. It's a lot easier to go after the people that have already demonstrated an interest in, whether it's like you're connected to them in a community, you've actually spoken with them, you know them, that's why they're maybe more likely to pay attention to you. Or they've like looked at, if we're talking about basketball, maybe it's like organizations that are connected to basketball or specific people that are geeks. Sometimes it's actually a lot better to reach out to the people who are like mid-level, just like you on Twitter, rather than these super influencer stars. They're much more likely to interact with you and maybe will amplify your message, because it's really about building a relationship with people rather than just telling them to support you.
There's a lot about like targeting, being very targeted and specific. You want to figure out exactly who your audience is and speak to them instead of just blasting it out for everyone, because the people that are actually come in and actually contribute are the people that are already predisposed to like the topic that you're doing the campaign about. So what you want to do is figure out who is this for? Like, who is my audience? And really go after them. Even if it's not huge, it doesn't have to be huge as long as they're engaged.
It's like, what did you say earlier? Like, it's better to go deep and committed community rather than this like really broad group. That's really how social media is. I think everything's turning into niches.
Absolutely.
More and more, and we're just going to continue saying that. Another thing that I see that people do, the third biggest crowdfunding mistake, I'll do this, is thinking that you can start from zero and that your crowdfunding campaign and your social media is a way to like build that community just like from scratch.
Yeah, like launching your social media presence the same day as you launch your campaign. Bound to not work.
It's like you have a bulletin board that no one knows where it's at. Like, and you're posting things to it, but there's no one to look at it. You haven't like said, this is our community bulletin board, and people go there all the time. You haven't set up anything like that. Social media is not, people aren't just paying attention to you if you're there. I think that's like, old media used to be organized differently, and so people who are new to social media don't necessarily understand that. But it's important you create a community not by just doing something, but by demonstrating like engagement with people, being credible by sharing really interesting things, offering value rather than just you're here and so pay attention to me. And so just it's really good to build this up before, and it's also really good to like not just start a crowdfunding campaign like that. You also need to do a lot of planning and strategy for that too.
I mean, this all fits in together. Like the more you prep for your campaign in advance, the easier it will be while you run it. And I mean, it all ties into preparation. So what you want to figure out in advance is, okay, what makes sense for me? Does Twitter make sense? Does Facebook make sense? Does Instagram make sense? Which social media am I really going to concentrate on? I mean, you can do all of them, but it's definitely easier if you pick one or two that you really think where you already have a presence, where that makes sense for whatever your project you're doing, and really focus on building engagement there. So that when you launch a campaign, people are already excited, people are already engaged, people are already ready, and they know about what you're doing.
And I think some people I see, they start like a project handle, a project page, but they don't use their personal account at all. And I think that social media, another thing here is that the personal and the professional get blended a little bit, and it's actually like helps you be more successful if you're not posting really weird things all the time. You gotta be careful of that. But so you need to promote your project through your personal connections to be successful, to help, because those are people that are primed to support what you're doing. So just make sure you're not like, oh, okay, so I have to be rigid posting about this project only from the project handle.
Right.
But you're missing out because you have this whole other audience that already pays attention to you. So if you want something out of social media, you have to put something in. I think that's
you have
really
to put yourself into it.
Yep.
I mean, people contribute to people, not to projects. That's what we would like. Something I like to say, that people like to feel a personal connection to who they're giving money to. So one way to do that is to use your personal social media to reach out to them.
We were talking about Shaq before as just a example of this, right? Like, it's just important. We're going to have a talk about another example later too, but it's just really important. Like, he writes back to people. It's like you're like, it's a reachable celebrity, and I think the same could be said for anyone on social media. It's the people that are reachable, the people that seem like real people, the people that are interesting, that you feel like you can have an exchange with. That's good, and make sure you're always responding to people, because the next thing I want to talk about is being a megaphone. I think that this idea, number 4, that's 8, but it's actually 2 4s, is social media is not a megaphone, you guys. You can't just post content endlessly and expect people to be really interested. You got to interact. You have to reach out to people. You have to share their content. It just can't be all your own. It can't be like this promotional thing. If I'm looking at a handle and it's just overly promotional about, hey, support me, support me, support me, support me. Oh, look at this. We did this, we did this. Like, there's a level of updating and keeping everybody informed that social media can be really useful for. But at the same time, it's about that community. And you know how you, when you're talking to somebody, it's like, think about you're at a party, right? Yeah. And you're just like, hey, I did this, I did this, I did this. You'd go crazy.
I would go crazy.
You would go crazy?
I'd be like, stop talking to me.
You wouldn't want to go to that party and talk to that person. So social media is the same way. No one wants to talk to a person that just talks about themselves constantly.
Exactly. You want to, a lot of crowdfunding is audience engagement, so engage your audience. Ask them questions. Spur them to talk to you. Get them to talk to you. People get really excited about this. A lot of times they don't expect it. So that's a great way to get the engagement high and get people really tied to your campaign, tied to your project, and really feel like a personal connection to it, is to ask them questions, ask them for feedback, ask them for feedback about your project, ask them for, submit ideas, ask them for anything. Especially if you build up this audience, it's going to be really, really effective.
And I think a way to have people start interacting with you is if you start interacting with them. So if they post something interesting, you're paying attention to your feed, that you reach out and you say, oh, cool. You engage with people, because it's just like any other exchange between people. Give a little and you'll get a little, right? And so that's really what it's about. And it's good to start doing that before a campaign, so you have those relationships in place when the campaign begins.
Exactly.
And it's not just internet people. These are actual people too. So it's also really good to go to events, to meet people, to talk, to network, to really amplify your social media. Because just like how you might have your personal social media, the people who pay attention to you most, probably, maybe not everybody, are people that know you. And you can there's different levels of knowing. And so if you're at a networking event, sharing your Twitter handle, reaching out to those people, pairing it all together is really good. And in the end, you're going to just meet more people that have more opportunities in your life as well.
Exactly. Yeah? You never know what happens. You never know, the people you meet, the connections you make. I'm sure everyone's had weird things happen and amazing things happen in their lives because of just randomly reaching out, or somebody randomly reaching out to you. So just be open to all of it. Serendipity. Big.
Not that movie. I didn't like that movie. It was that movie. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I don't know. Not the movie. Okay. Other, scheduling everything in advance. 1, not everyone knows that you can schedule things on social media, but you can, and a lot of people do. And it's a really good way to, when you start up your campaign, to have a calendar, and you can really be like, okay, this week I'm going to do this week I'm going to do this week I'm going to do this, right? Yes, good to have that initial plan, and you can actually schedule out content. So when I say content, I mean, again, not support me, but maybe you have a new perk you're going to release, and you're going to do it in week 2 or something, right? And so you have the image of the perk. You have something funny to say about it or something, right? And so you can have content ready. Maybe you draft all the tweets for when you reach different levels, 25% done, 50% done, and things like this, right? you can schedule out a lot of things, but don't over-schedule. And if something's not working, change it. The thing about social media is it's so immediate and so now that it's really important to not just operate in this like old marketing way of communication, that you really need to react to people and you need to be able to produce content live that is connected to what's going on in the world.
So if you have a calendar, that's great, but if you don't deviate from that calendar regardless of what's happening, that's not great. You want to be able to shift and change with how your campaign is going. All of a sudden you get a huge contribution. You want to like change things up. You want to move things up, move a post up, move a post back, change it up completely, add something new. Be willing to pivot and modify your content and do things differently, but definitely have a plan going into it.
Yes. Again, planning, everybody. It's not just making a campaign. It's planning it out, and that's how you're going to be successful.
We take a look.
Yeah, we have a campaign for you. It is a celebrity campaign, but we think it's a really good example of some best practices for engaging people. David's, done a lot of work in like looking and deep diving into what made this campaign successful. So you want to talk a little bit about it?
So we're going to talk about a campaign called The Bounce Back, run by Shamar Moore from Criminal Minds. So one of the reasons this campaign, as you can see, was really, really, really successful film campaign, and one of the main reasons is that is because of the social media presence. So obviously, this is not going to apply to everyone in terms of this guy had a huge, huge, huge following on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram. But if you think about it, one of the reasons he got this following, and that other celebrities who are maybe bigger celebrities than him don't, is because he is just incredibly, incredibly engaged. And he used this engagement to really boost the excitement on his campaign. So a lot of times he's just posting content here, and he's also calling out people who his fans and making them feel really special by sharing like pictures of them. Like they send it like a few fans who send him pictures. He posted them on Instagram. Other fans would see that, and then all of a sudden he would get like tons and tons and tons of people sending pictures, like in his merchandise, etc. So a really great way to like take the offline and put it online. Almost.
He set a precedent. He set a precedent about engaging with fans, about acknowledging them, about offering them special content, about being relevant, posting daily. It's just some general really good best practices. And yes, he has a level of exposure with Criminal Minds, but he's also somebody who's been able to leverage social media in a way that not many celebrities have.
Right.
And paired with a really strong social media manager that he worked with, who managed the posting on the actual bounce back handle. I mean, did you like this? There's only 2,500 people that are following this handle, but it's not about this gigantic number. It's about people that pay attention. There's a lot of interaction here. Anytime that you see a tweet where the handles are at the beginning of a tweet, that means you're writing to that person. And so this would just be, it's like a community. It's like people hanging out online every day just talking to each other. And they did this really successfully.
And one of the main reasons this campaign was successful is because people felt like they got to know Shamar as a person, not just an actor, not just, and he went from like this like, oh, this untouchable, like really far away, like, famous actor person to like somebody actually relatable and somebody who these people really wanted to support. And when we went to that, he became somebody just like them. People got so much more excited, and they really, obviously, as you can see, they got his campaign. They eventually raised over $600,000, well over his goal, for him to make his film.
Yeah, and also the Facebook. They had a lot of great visuals and fun things here to engage people. Like you even just like, I was looking at this right before this, and you have this note right here where the community manager who had been managing the social media for the campaign writes this really nice note to the whole entire community they have, thanking them for the time that they've spent together. And then it has tons of likes and then tons of comments, and it's just a really good example of that it's actually
transparent too. It's not trying to hide anything. It's really like being very open.
So I'm gonna. Oh, excuse me, 1 second, tweeting. Did you
Always
want to?
tweeting.
Did you need anything anymore? That was a bad joke. I'm sorry. I thought it would be funnier than it was. Anyway, that's like some basic crowdfunding big mistakes that we see people make
in social media. Yep.
Yep. And hopefully we gave you some ideas about ways that you can change your presence and make a better impact. Next week, thank you for being here, David.
No problem.
Thank you all for watching. Next week, we're going to be having a chat about crowdfunding research projects with our education lead here, Bree, and spread the word about that one. And we have all of our different chats available on our YouTube playlist, Crowd Chats, where we talk about introduction to crowdfunding, discuss perks. We have a lot of different topics that I think would be really helpful for a lot of people. So, and if you have any questions or anything, I'm at Indiegogo. If you ever want to chat, hey,
engage.
Yeah, exactly. I'll write you back on this thing probably. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good week.